What a day we have for you today, folks. We're going to open up with this question. What can we do to minimize misdiagnosis? First of all, in medicine, they say it's very rare. I happen to disagree with that, and I'll tell you what I'd do if I were teaching medical schools, okay? Then we have Dr. Greg Emerson all the way from Brisbane, Australia. Two parts. He is a hunter-gatherer who's under a lot of stress, right? So the two parts are really taking those two concepts and interweaving them is really good. I interviewed him a few weeks ago. And finally, another physician friend of mine, right? Dr. Christine Salter in St. Louis. How did she learn about the fungal link to so much illness? All that and some other goodies thrown in on today's Know the Cause. My name is Doug Kaufman. For the past 40 years, I've dedicated my life and even my career to finding the root cause of disease. Join me in a team of physicians, pharmacists, and scientists, and soon you too will know the cause. You know, one of the things I try and do here on Know the Cause is teach you that there are alternatives, viable alternatives. I'll give you the science whenever I can. You heard me in the past year talk about fine needle aspiration, breast biopsy, right? So instead of cutting in and taking a gouge of the lump and sending it off to a lab, the doctor uses a thin needle and goes in and aspirates, pulls off. So this isn't a hard mass, it's got liquid in it. And then they send that off to the laboratory to test for fungus. In two of these instances, these two women that were on the internet, both didn't have breast cancer, although they were diagnosed with it. They actually had breast fungus, easily treatable, right? And they were. Then there's Lung, the journal Lung. It's a big journal for pulmonologists. 2013 found 27 cases of diagnosed lung cancer, radiologically and physically. So the doctor worked them up, did all the blood work, took the CT scan. Yep, you've got lung or cancer. 27 of them didn't have it. They had lung fungus. The point I want to make is misdiagnoses are not as rare as we think, folks. No harm, no foul. When you're seeing 50 patients a day as a mere mortal, as a human with an MD degree, that's got to get tiring. I did that for a period of time in my clinical nutrition work, and that gets very, very tiring. So we're not going to point fingers. We're going to aware our audience, okay? So look at this. Misdiagnoses. Are they rare? Patients die every day in the U.S. with misdiagnosis. So says a book called Internal Bleeding. Ooh, I remember reviewing this book. It's a good one. Patients die every day in the U.S. who have been misdiagnosed. How do you know? It's called an autopsy. Look at the next slide. Misdiagnoses aren't necessarily confirmed in life. This should make you cry, thinking of mom and dad, your sister, your brother. The nationwide autopsy rate is low, as this says. Only about 6% of all deaths are autopsied. But even of that small percentage, Elizabeth Burton, a medical doctor, says experts find a 40% misdiagnosis rate. 6% of all autopsies. Well, she died of heart disease. Well, what's that huge lump of stuff in her jugular vein? Let's cut it open and see. Oh my gosh. It's Aspergillus mold. Just saying, folks, while you're still breathing, while you're still hearing, while we're still talking, we need to take steps. I have turned over a rock here that's amazing. We need to understand the impact of these bad little buggers, yeast, mold, mildew, in our health and the consequences that ensue. They're fighting to take you down from the second they get on board. Why? Because when you and I die, by the way, the further you go in the soil, I've heard, the more fungi and bacteria. Do you think it's coinkydinky? When you die, we dig with a tractor 6-foot hole and drop you in it. Yeast, fungus are home, and you're miserable, okay? Misdiagnoses, don't be one of those autopsies when they say, whoops, nobody's looking, he's dead, he can't hear you anyway, but that isn't what he died of. Okay, finally this. How can misdiagnoses be minimized? Begin teaching fungus in every medical school in the country. This is my prayer. It ain't gonna happen, folks. It ain't gonna happen. Because antibiotics, the billion-dollar, trillion-dollar sellers, are fungus. And it's one way, it's the oral route of administering fungus to us. Thank God it kills bacteria, but too much of it can induce cancer. I've showed you those slides over and over again. Now read this with me. This comes out of Fungal Infections Mimicking Lung Cancer in the Journal of Radiology. Even in patients presenting with clinical and radiological findings suspicious for malignancy, cancer, radiologists should be aware of other diagnoses, including fungal infections. Now that was circa 2013, the same year that article came out in Lung, and they should have entitled, I wish doctors were as free as you and me. I wish they could title, oops, 27 people we said had lung cancer, they all had lung fungus. By the way, they're all doing great on antifungals. How I wish those doctors knew of the Kaufman diets, right? Not only kill it, but then starve it from coming back. That's what this show is all about. I'm not hammering on any because misdiagnoses are happening. There's what, 1 million patients a month going to a doctor, 10 million a month? Obviously, mistakes are going to happen. You need to be aware. Walk into that doctor's office as a smart consumer. I only know how to say this because of Nurse Jenny. SpectraCell analysis, what is it? She's going to teach us, and then we get back, a couple of part series from Dr. Greg Emerson on stress, hunter-gatherer, and a whole lot more.
Hi, I'm Jenny Herbacek with the Cancer Connection. Did you know there's a simple blood test that can reveal your nutrient status? If you're deficient in B vitamins, for example, your liver's going to struggle to detoxify your body because it uses many B vitamins in that process. Linus Pauling told us 40 years ago that vitamin C can inhibit the growth of certain cancers, and alpha-lipoic acid has been shown to kill cancer cells. To find out what you're missing in your diet, you can use a test called SpectraCell analysis. It's a simple blood test that can provide an individualized sneak peek into your cells to see that they have all the fuel that they need to be healthy. For Know the Cause, I'm Jenny Herbacek.
Yeah, I promised you guys a special guest today. How about standing in ice-cold, snow-melted water, Lake Wanaka in New Zealand, or then Oregon fly fishing? He travels all the time. Very special guest. Let me introduce him to you. Greg Emerson. Hey, bud. Good to see you.
So nice to be back, Doug.
Oh, I'll tell you, you still got the farm. You're still playing.
No, farm is gone. I'm no longer a farmer. I'm a nomadic hunter-gatherer now.
Yeah.
It's a long story.
And traveling the world like you always have. You never stop. You laugh at me because I take 1-hour flights. Right?
Well, that was one of the problems with the farm, is that it's because, I mean, I have great respect for farmers, but boy, it's a massive amount of work.
Yeah,
and I'm working 12-hour shifts at my clinic and then rushing away in the weekends to be a full-time farmer. And when you look at us anthropologically, the move from the hunter-gatherer to, being farmers, which we had to do with the population explosion, of course, but we went from, working 16 hours a week to working 16-hour days, breaking our backs, tilling soil and ploughing soil to plant wheat. So we went from this very happy, relatively stress-free existence as hunter-gatherers to incredibly long hours, stressful, doing exercise that we weren't meant to be doing and growing wheat, which we now know is a disaster for us. So the move from the hunter-gatherer, although necessary, to the farmer was not good, and I found that same thing happening to me.
I've known you 9 or 10 years now, and you went from an apartment guy out to the country on acreage, lots of acreage, where you were, you did everything. You picked up the chickens' eggs, you milked the cows, you ate the cows, and so forth. I mean, absolutely amazing. Are you now living back in an apartment?
Yes, I live in a small townhouse in a city, which is a big change from 50 acres surrounded by a national park. But it has allowed me to be much more social, which I think is very important for Homo sapiens. I mean, it's interesting when you look at us anthropologically, we're meant to be living in these small tribes of 30, 40, maybe 100 people. And the data has been very clear, particularly with post-traumatic stress disorder and stuff. One of the things that's causing problems in the world now is this movement away from the village atmosphere, the tribal atmosphere, where everybody had a job, everybody had a purpose, everybody contributed, everybody suffered adversity but worked together to get through it, and everybody became stronger because of it. We've moved from that tribal situation to now where we're living kind of in isolation.
Yeah.
They say the biggest medical problem in the United States now is loneliness, because even though you live in New York in a city of 20 million, you might be living isolated by yourself in an apartment where you don't have to contribute to society, you don't have to contribute to the tribe in food gathering, you just pop down to the cafe downstairs and pick up a coffee and a sandwich.
How about this for exercise?
And that for exercise, you sit in your room on your computer getting exposed to electromagnetic frequencies where your friends are on Facebook and Instagram rather than getting together as a tribe, and you're not getting stronger through growing to adversity. So it's become a very abnormal way of existence. Now, that being said, for me, selling the farm has allowed me to move back to a much more community atmosphere, which has been very good for me.
You're a physician. I mean, you work 12 hours a day in the clinic in Brisbane. How did you farm? How did you do everything? I wondered, there's 24 hours in a day and you were working 25. So that made sense to me. Now going back into this almost isolationism, you say, has created a whole nother problem. Now what do I do? Didn't you go from swimming in these ice waters to, you know, doing all of your duties that you had to seeing patients? When did you sleep? I mean, is it nicer being kind of isolated from all of that?
Well, I mean, that was one of the big problems, was this huge amount of stress that I put myself under by trying to do too many things at once. And I realized, particularly when I've done a lot of work with stress now, I realized how damaging being in that sympathetic overdrive, that constant state of stress. Well, you know, I've discussed before how the science has shown that hormesis is very good for Homo sapiens, the short-term stress. We get stronger from a short-term stress. And you and I were just discussing the benefits of high-intensity interval training now with exercise. You're much better off going to short-term of exercise and getting growth and then resting. You go to the gym and work out for 24 hours, you're going to cause some damage. Long-term stress disaster.
Greg and I both used to run long distance. We found that wasn't the way to go. Do you want to learn more about stress? We're going to do, when we get back from this break, we're going to talk a little bit more about some of the stresses he has endured and how he's done it. Okay, so don't go away. Dr. Greg Emerson, all the way from Brisbane, Australia. Good to see you again, Greg.
So good to be back.
We'll be right back with more. You don't just sell the ranch without stress. You don't just see 20 more patients a week. He's got a lot of them without the stress. But he and I were just sitting here, and I was looking at his shot. John, switch. See that shot? His hair has turned gray. When I first met you, and we were laughing at how men can't do anything to look good with dyed hair. Women look like $1 million. Men, there's no way with $1 million you could dye this hair and make me, you know, look good. Why?
I don't know. I was just at a talk by Naveen Jain, who's this incredibly inspiring entrepreneur who's got plans to go to the moon and mine it. And I'm like, if you've got so much money and get to the moon, can you put a little bit of money into the fact that men can't dye their hair and look anywhere near reasonable, and why is their hair going grey, and fix that problem for a bit of money?
But you look distinguished.
Thank you. That's what I tell myself.
You look distinguished. Stress.
So do you. You look distinguished.
But I am. That's the difference. You're a doctor. See, we're talking about cortisol release from these little glands that sit on top of the kidneys, right? And this cortisol is a hormone. It induces this fight or flight. Greg, don't swing at me. I'm going to run from you, or I'm going to fight back, right? Cortisol is a poison, you know. And I'm looking at this guy. He looks so good since I've known him so many years. How did you sell the farm? How did you begin seeing all those patients? He's touring, going to all these medical meetings, learning. He's like a sponge. And you're traveling nonstop. So there's your circadian rhythms. Where does stress play a role in all of this for you? Well,
in the end, I had to sell a farm. Although the farm was my dream, in the end, it became very, very stressful for me. And I had a huge amount of stress this year. And when you talk about cortisol, it's interesting because there's a thing called cortisol steal, where your hormones go down a road and they either turn left, they get to a T-junction, they either turn left to cortisol or they turn right to everything else. And if you're phenomenally stressed and you've got everything turning left to go to cortisol, all your other hormones are going to become imbalanced. But that wasn't a big problem. The problem was cortisol for me, but the stress was several. I lost my father to Alzheimer's disease this year.
You were with him, huh?
I did the night shift, and he died at 5 in the morning, and I was with him when he died. My mother's now in full-time hospital care with Alzheimer's disease. She doesn't know who I am. She doesn't know who she is. I was investigated by the medical board 4 times from complaints from other doctors, which was very stressful.
No patients.
No patients, just other doctors. And cleared of all time. They said, yes, no good medicine, but there you go. I was in love and my relationship ended, which was very stressful. And then I had all the work from on the farm. So I got to a stage where I actually did, and years ago I would never admit this, but I did get to a stage of quite bad depression, and largely by overwhelm. And depression is an enormous problem in the world, particularly with men. I mean, men are doing it really tough. The depression rates, the suicide rates, for many reasons, are sky high in men. And I realized my only way out was to get out of overwhelm. And the most overwhelming problem for me was my social isolation being on the farm. And I realized the first thing that I had to do, and all I did was concentrate on selling the farm. And piece by piece, I've been slowly adjusting my life.
Has this made you a better doctor?
Oh,
well, you're dealing with things now that aren't physical, right? They're emotional.
It's changed me as a person. I had started a change, but if you look at me 10 years ago, even on the show, I'm a completely and utterly different person. I'm still a warrior, but I've also learned how to be vulnerable. I've learned the yin and yang of life. I've learned, yes, it's good that I'm a warrior, but I used to be a warrior that was dressed in like a knight in this chainmail steel guard that, sure, no pain could get in, but also no joy could get in. Now I'm more like a naked samurai. Sure, I'm still a warrior, but I'm much more vulnerable, and I avoid the stress by being smart now rather than use chain of armor. So I'm a different person, but I'm also a very, very different doctor. I learned about a different way to look at heart disease, but I also completely changed the way I looked at medicine. I used to look at medicine as various organs walking together, and now I'm like Trinity kissing Neo in the Matrix, where he wakes up from being dead, and instead of seeing walls and corridors, he now sees the computer program, and I see the body now as an electron flow and mitochondria.
There's much more to this, folks, and you can listen to the podcast that Dr. Emerson and I have done, because this is an amazing story. So good to see you again. Every year, methodically, he takes a flight way across the ocean, comes here to good old Dallas, Texas. Always good to see you. Thank you for that.
Thanks for having me back.
You bet. Well, my friends, I am so blessed to have met so many doctors through this illustrious career, and it has been one. A couple of years ago, I got a phone call from a physician in St. Louis, and she kind of said, "Who are you?" That physician is with me right now, Dr. Christine Salter, drsalter.com, Dr. Salter. We have become buds. We've lectured at some of the same symposiums. We see each other all the time, and I'm so proud to introduce her to you. That was an interesting start. Your patient made you like me. Somebody
That's
watches
right.
know the cause.
That's
Funny
right.
story, huh?
Yes. She was a very persistent patient, and I have a concierge practice, and so I'd been working with her trying to find the root cause, and she says you need to know the cause, and
the rest is history.
That's right.
To the point today, now this is fun. When I was speaking at the TTAC, the Truth About Cancer, we were communicating via text,
That's right.
And you were in Tucson, Arizona, teaching doctors about diseases that ensue when the mitochondria, it's all part of our cell, right? When those little energy bodies in our cell. What did you teach? What can my audience learn from what you taught?
Well, I feel that the mitochondria or mitochondrial dysfunction is the true root cause of diseases, of basically the chronic diseases.
Okay.
And it's really not just what I think, and that's what the literature is showing now.
Okay.
There are 2 main kinds of mitochondrial dysfunction. So the ones in children, if a child is born with a genetic disorder, they don't live very long. So that tells us the importance of having healthy mitochondria. They develop problems with their brains, with their livers, with their kidneys, with their muscles. Nothing works very well, and they usually die within the first year of life. That's the genetic mitochondrial disease. But mitochondrial dysfunction, just looking at normal mitochondria that are now not functioning well, now we get other symptoms that are similar to those, but not to the same degree. So now you have problems with your muscles, you have problems with your heart and with your kidney. And,
I would imagine your energy is
well,
gone,
the energy is the
right?
biggest thing. If someone comes in complaining of fatigue, you immediately
That's
think
the
of
red
the
flag.
the mitochondria.
What can people do? Let's say how would I know if my mitochondria, and our cells have mitochondria in them, right? So we need this stuff.
Right, exactly.
What's the first sign? Kind of falling asleep all day? Okay.
Yeah.
So chronic fatigue.
Chronic fatigue.
And here's where you come in. This is why I wanted you on TV instead of all these people professing that the mitochondria goes bad and so you just, No, this doctor knows a bit about that. If I came to see you with this mitochondria dysfunction, what would you do?
Well, I would take a detailed history.
Okay.
The patient usually tells us what's really going on. Okay, it's like being an investigator, right? And so you're going to take this detailed history to give you information to see what have you been exposed to, what has happened that you know could have nailed those mitochondria.
Okay.
And one of the biggest things is exposure to fungus and mycotoxins. So, and patients, they'll go, oh no, I've never seen mold.
Right, my home's clean.
Yeah, everything's clean. It's a new house.
Right.
And then we'll go all the way back to birth. Were they breastfed to prepare their microbiome?
Yeah, thank you.
Right. So were they breastfed? And then if you see, well, I had a tonsillectomy at 7, then you know right away what did they have up until 7. Antibiotics, right?
Yeah.
So we know, and then you say, well, you probably you had a lot of antibiotics. Well, did your parents give you any probiotics? What?
What's that?
What's that? Right. So no probiotics. So right there, you know that the microbiome is already stressed, and that there's probably fungus growing already.
I wish all of you lived in St. Louis. I was just there. We presented at a meeting with a couple hundred physicians. We were kind of teaching and training them. By the way, Dr. Salter, after I spoke about cancer, these doctors were amazed. Then she got up for half an hour and told about 3 patients who they thought had cancer. This is a doctor who thinks, thank God you came into my life. This is just amazing. If you want more information on her concierge practice, this is a different kind of practice. I love what you're doing. Beautiful office, beautiful people in there. If you want more information, just go to Dr. Salter, S-A-L-T-E-R, drsalter.com. Thank you for sharing mitochondria with us. Good information. Thanks.
Thank you.
Did you like this? We love bringing it to you every day, folks, Monday through Friday right here. But did you know I do a live show? Few of you know this. On Facebook, any of you can go to knowthecause/Facebook, and watch the show. It's live and you can ask questions of me. Tuesday and Thursday, 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. Central Time, okay? Now, on today's show, what did you think? Teach fungus. Minimize all these errors that are going on in medicine today. I think that would be great. Dr. Emerson, thank you so much for being a hunter-gatherer, and thank you so much for expounding a little bit on your stress. It's kind of good to know in our world, our everyday whirlwind world, that doctors have real stresses also. He's a down-to-earth kind of guy, as is Dr. Salter, only she's a down-to-earth kind of woman. And it's really fascinating how she learned about fungus. Think about this for a second. How did you learn about fungus? It's fascinating when I give these lectures now, people know me. The word, thanks to all of you, is getting out. God bless you guys. I'll see you again next time.